back to another slice of the good, the bad, and the orange. Today, I think will be a very lively and dynamic conversation. I have two of my esteemed colleagues with me. The first is our first repeat podcaster, Eric Long. And a tidbit about him, he was in the Navy, so that's two Navy guys you've seen, and one Marine. And we've got more of our military service people yet to come. And the other is our own Francesca Wers. Francesca from Long Island, New York, has been highly involved in Arizona education because she has 4 kids in the education system, has some strong beliefs about it, and so I think it will lead to a great conversation about the misnomers about Arizona education, because the number one we hear is it's 50th in the state, it's the worst education ever, it's horrible, it's compared to everywhere else. And first of all, I don't believe that. I mean, I see lots of smart people who went to Arizona schools, and I know that the Scottsdale district and Cave Creek districts are actually pretty good public education districts and fairly highly ranked. But what do you two? So Eric Long, we'll start with you. What give us a little bit of insight that you have about education in Arizona?
Well, as a father of almost 4-year-old twins, the education system is pretty important to me, so I've been keeping an eye on it ever since we moved here. I get some heartburn when I hear that number 48, because it's kind of an arbitrary ranking. A lot of it's based off of the federal funding and subsidies that Arizona schools get, or rather don't get, that puts us down on the list. Things like not teaching Common Core, we don't get federal funding for that. The other thing that I've learned is there's a lot more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic, which are important, but there's trades still being taught in the high schools here. My niece just enrolled in the culinary program at Cactus Shadows in the Cave Creek district. They're teaching our children to actually be something, not just pushing them through a pipeline. So don't take that number 48 for, I guess, what it's worth, but dig into the why. And if you look on greatschools.org, a lot of our schools are ranked 7 and above. Majority of them are 9 and 10. And I know Francesca's got something to say, so I'll turn it over to her.
No. You're a woman of few words.
I am, especially when I'm being videotaped. But I can only speak from the experience I've had in Arizona, and there's one really important attribute that we have here that most states do not have, but should certainly look into, and that's the option that our students have to go to private school if they'd like, with the state support. So of all the things that you hear, you may not hear that piece, and that's probably the most important piece that we have to offer. I'm not one for rankings and stats and things like that. I have 4 children in the public school system. I've been in the public school system for 8 years, served on the PTO board for 4 years. I am at every single school board meeting that they will allow me to attend.
Is that because it's standing room only, or is there other reasons for that?
Yeah, standing room only, maybe.
Okay.
But so that's what I base my experience on, and the things that I encourage all of you to do as well. Ask questions. If you're new to Arizona, find a friend that's here, that's been here, ask around, go to the websites. But I think that my mistake was just assuming that I live in a nice neighborhood and the schools are going to be fantastic. So don't make that assumption.
The other thing that you brought up, private school with state support, the other thing that is huge here that not many states allow is what they call open enrollment. So you don't necessarily have to send your children in the
There are pros and cons to open enrollment, so.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, as long as it's not like you get to send your kid wherever you want. There has to be
You actually can send your kid wherever you want.
an allowance for the child, but
Yeah.
you're not stuck. A lot of people that I see on our Facebook page are like, what are good family places? Where are the best school districts? Because they're considering buying a house where they can send their kids to get a good education. Well, you don't have to necessarily take that into account here.
Well, and actually, school district search is a big deal here, and our school districts are rather chaotic in how the lines are drawn anyhow.
Yes.
But
And also another positive note that we
positive note, that's
have,
two.
we have to mention, yes, this is going to be 2 and my last probably, but I'll give it to you. Charter schools. Arizona is a big advocate of charter schools, and they are such a blessing to a lot of families who, even with the government and state support, still can't afford to send their kids to the private or parochial schools. Charter schools are a fantastic option for our students.
I believe it's either number 1 or 2 in the nation in Scottsdale is the charter school. I know my sister tried to get my nieces in, and one was, I mean, it's an extremely tough.
Yeah, I would also say don't be
curriculum.
intimidated by the process. You'll get in, but just get that application in, and then you can decide when the time comes if it's right for you. But as soon as your kids are able to, I'd get enrolled and then make the decision when they call you, because there will be, could be months, it could be a year, wouldn't be longer than that in my experience, but don't discount it as an option for your family.
So, Francesca, you
Yes,
talked
sir.
about, you've given us a couple of positive notes.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think the voucher program is an exceptional program. It's
And very unique to Arizona.
yep. And we talked about charter schools. There's also some fine arts schools. There's lots of education options. But
Mhm.
so, in the most Long Island diplomatic way, because we might have people from the Midwest who can get their feelings hurt easily. What are some of the downfalls you've seen?
So school boards, right? It's a big buzzword all around the country, how important they are to be involved. And as you've heard before, COVID has truly enlightened all parents as to what's going on in the classroom. So when you're going to vote, make sure you know your candidates, make sure you've done your homework, and make sure you vote, because it's very, very important who's on that school board. You want to make sure they have children in the district, because obviously they have a vested interest in what's going on in the district. If they don't have children, in my opinion, they can't possibly care as much as I do, right?
So you're right, but the reason I'm picking that up is someone's knee is rattling.
I'm trying to stay calm.
Okay, well, it's shaking our microphone, so I'm like, what is this noise? I've tightened and tightened.
Yeah.
So
Okay, I'm off the
step
table
away
now.
from the table.
I'm away
this
from
is
the table.
This is a 1960s kind of retro table. As you can see, it's gotten burnt and
All right,
things.
fine.
Anyhow, so when you talk about school board, though, you're right. It depends on people's motives, and that's the problem with all politics, even on whether it be local or national. It's driven by their motive, and so it's hard to find good school board people, I'm sure, but there are good school board people too. Right?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
There are some really great ones coming up in Scottsdale. That's all I can speak to. I don't know about the other districts, but so I encourage everyone to honestly do their homework. Don't take my word for it. Do your homework, read up on them, meet them. There's so many places you can go to meet the candidates before voting day. Take advantage of that. See if it's the right fit for you.
And that shines a light on, if you're concerned about your child's education, it's not a daycare. You need to have a vested interest in your child's education.
It is not a daycare.
Outside of the school. I don't want to be Mr. Rose-colored glasses. I get accused of that a lot, if only looking for the good.
I'm Mr. Orange-colored glasses.
There are some downsides to the public school system here in the biggest two that I see is the child-to-teacher ratio is much, much higher than anywhere else.
21.2 students per teacher.
Yeah, and it's higher than that. It's like 40 or something.
That's not what the Google machine says.
Oh, well, it must be true if Google said it.
Googling it.
Oh, yeah. It's like Wikipedia. Our two sources.
Yeah, and teacher pay is some of the lowest in the nation, which is probably why there's such a high ratio of students to teachers. But that's things that need to change. And again, to your point, it goes further than just the school board. Not to stray too far into politics, but you really got to know the candidates you're voting for at the local level, because they will affect how money gets spent on the schools, and they're not even in the school system. So, I was fortunate enough. I had parents. I grew up in California, which I can tell you the public school system is atrocious. But they're higher up on the list because they do all the federal funding wickets. I was fortunate enough, my parents sent me to private school, but they still sat us down and we ate dinner around a table, and they asked us, okay, what's one thing you learned today? Every family meal I remember, whether both my parents were there or not, so what's one thing you learned today? And it goes back to that vested, and the pandemic forced a lot of people
To be vested.
to be to just understand their child's education. I think for far too long we got off that track of
No, you cannot watch what your child is learning on Zoom and Zoom teaching, because we don't want you to see what we're doing. I mean, I think that's what really sparked a lot of controversy here was, I think parents assume, because we all assume, that our kids are getting taught, arithmetic and spelling and history, but not some of the other fringe type of.
Well, I think
things.
you expect it to be the way it was when you grew up.
Right.
And unfortunately things have changed so much in the education world as in many other areas.
You walk 5 miles uphill in the snow both ways.
Right.
Hey,
I could have.
Were you there?
There's snow in
Yeah,
New York.
all right,
I mean,
all
I
right.
could have. I did walk to school over the railroad tracks.
Wasn't that dangerous?
Very
Okay.
creepy too,
No,
because
which-
there was a cemetery behind the school.
which side of the track.
Were
I
you
went
on
to the
were you
right. I was on the
wrong
wrong
of
side,
the
but
tracks?
I went to the right side for
But I'm bummed.
education.
So what other, and in moving to Arizona group, that education seems to be like it's almost, that is the highest asked question. So as people are starting to look at schools, and they've got in their minds, a lot of them, that we moved to a place where the education is horrible.
Well, like I said, when I moved here, I assumed that I was moving into a nice area and the school was going to be amazing. Because where I grew up, the schools were fantastic because it was a wealthy, affluent area. No open enrollment, mind you.
Right.
So when I moved here, I found out very quickly that that's not the case. So every school, that's why I'm suggesting you research every school. Doesn't matter if it's down the street or 2 miles off or whatever. Just ask around and do your homework. So important. And I didn't, because I just assumed it was okay.
So where did you do your research? So when you start talking about research, people want to do research. They say, what's the best school district? Well, that's an opinion, really.
Yeah.
People throw out their opinion.
Yeah.
Not that isn't valid, because experience matters. But so what are there some
So-
good places to do that kind of research?
So I moved here 2013. I had 4 boys under 5 at the time. So I had one going into kindergarten. I didn't have any friends, obviously, I just moved here. So I didn't have that option to talk to my neighbor or this or that, what have you. So put him in the school, but at that point I became very involved. So I was at the school all the time. The teachers, things were different before COVID. Obviously, you could go to the classrooms a lot more often and help with the reading. I mean, I was like literally there all the time. They were almost going to pay me, but anyway. So that's where I learned all this stuff. I mean, talk about COVID on Zoom. Well, I was actually there in the classroom hearing some of the lessons and was just, it was an eye-opener for sure. So where would you go?
Yeah, where are you searching?
You know, now I guess, as I said, like for all these folks moving here,
Yep.
you know, I wasn't a social media person, so I didn't have the option to go to a Moving Arizona site and say, hey, what do you think about moving to Peoria or wherever? But that, to me, is a huge resource that people can go to that site and ask those questions. I wasn't aware of any of that 8 years ago.
Well, you know, we've got all these sites out there. Do you think any of them have validity?
Well, for me, you know, I'm not a big social media person. So at this point, I've done like the footwork. So I've been in the classrooms, I'm at the board meetings. And even if you don't live in that area, you're just curious to know, go to a school board meeting. And that's a great way to learn about that area. And if, hey, I want to move here or I don't, or, you know, go to the charter schools and take a tour. They're doing that now back in person. And same with the parochial schools if that's something that you're interested in. But do your homework. You don't have to use social media, but it's a lot easier now than it was for me 8 years ago without the social media element. So where to go? I mean, again, a site like Moving to Arizona, there are people from all over talking about their experience. That's tremendous support.
So, greatschools.org
Yeah.
is, well, I mean,
What was that?
That was
they can't hear that on the radio.
I got an eye roll.
What I'm
not
saying is you can go to greatschools.org or there are a few other sites like that, but again, it's just a piece of it. Don't drive it home like, oh my God, they gave it a 9, so it must be fantastic.
No, that's not at all.
They
what
gave
I
it
was
a
doing.
9, and now go find out why they gave it a 9.
Yes, but I'm just saying that's a great.
Because my school got a 10, and it's not a 10, P.S.
Well, you have to look at what constitutes that rating, but it at least it gives kind of demographical data, test scores.
I can't believe half that stuff on there, so you can't ask me that.
Well, we can ask you that.
I mean,
Well,
you can, but
I
I have to do my own homework. I don't believe in those stats and stuff. Like I can't.
So I will. So let me push that a little further. So if we say we don't like the stats, we don't believe that stuff. Francesca, you know how this goes. See what a sales meeting's like, Francesca. No, I'm just kidding. Don't just say. I don't want you to just say you don't believe it. But what?
Well, I take it as a grain of salt, right?
Okay.
As I said,
So
the school got rated, like the school that I went to when I first moved here,
Yep.
was rated 9 out of 10.
Okay.
Okay, sitting in the classroom for 5 minutes, you know it's not a 9 out of 10. I mean, so
Why?
my point is, because of the content of the curriculum, you know?
Okay.
So my point is, take it, if you like the school, whatever it is, you looked at the rating, now you see it got a 9 or a 7 or whatever, go to the school board meeting, go to the PTO meeting, say hello to the principal, meet him or her. You'll get a lot of information out of them for sure, if you're a good little investigator. And that's where I would start, legit. I don't go by those numbers.
Well, I think that is it. Now, are you allowed to meet with principals still?
Of course.
Oh, okay, just checking.
Yeah, no, everything's now in person, and and again, that is the best thing for you
No,
to
I'm
do
talking
for
about
your
you
family.
personally.
No, I am not. But
All right. Well, I think that, so Eric, what would you say about that research piece? Again, to dispel the notion that we're the worst, we're 48th in the nation. I know, and it's not so much about the stats. It's not about they take money or don't take money. So in your mind, so you got twins coming up. I don't know where you're going to put them.
Well, I'm lucky enough to be in Paradise Valley.
Oh, that's right. Which goes on.
don't believe the hype.
No, I don't. So, like I said, the websites are a good jumping off point. I'm very analytical. I'm a data nerd. I did
I'm sorry,
analytics.
It's more than a data nerd.
So I take these numbers at face value, and I want to know how they got there.
Yeah.
What made them decide that we were 48? You know, what are all the factors that went into this? And when I look at grade schools, okay, why is it a 10? Why is this one a 6? And then, like you said, Francesca, get involved. Go to the school board meetings. Go, you know, you can go tour a school.
They love when you tour, actually.
Well,
They do.
Some do. I mean, but you don't. And I understand you can't go to a school if you're in Wisconsin and you're thinking about moving here, and that's where I think.
Yeah, but you can make a call to the principal and kind of dissect things from there. You know.
Yeah.
You don't have to physically be here.
You know, you've got to start somewhere. So, unfortunately, greatschools.org is kind of a impartial resource. I just wouldn't trust all the. I wouldn't trust any article. I'm starting to trust old headlines from The Onion more and more today as they're coming.
Oh boy.
Satire is becoming reality very quickly. But no, I mean, we were kind of fortunate and we did look at the school districts when we were shopping for our home. And we did consider, I mean, right now we're sending our kids to private preschool to just give them a little bit of a leg up when they do go to school. But again, that's our involvement. Like, you want your kid's education to be valuable, invest in it. That doesn't mean dollars. Invest that time. Invest the time into doing the research to get them into a good school district. Invest the time in.
And I think that accessibility, maybe it gets back to what Francesca said. Accessibility is there. People just need to take the time to be accessible. So like you said, meeting the teachers, meeting the principal, going to school board meetings. You know.
And I get it. It's hard when you're coming from out of the state, as I did. You like have no idea, you know. You just don't know. So I hope this helps some of you out there considering a move here or any state really, to just the basic fundamentals of doing a tiny bit of research for your children. And your own sanity, frankly.
So, idea is an idea. Is that? Will you say idea? Can you?
Really?
Yeah. It's a podcast. I'm in control here at the White House.
What do you call a deer with no eye? No idea.
Now I get it.
What do you call a deer with no eye and no legs? Still no idea.
You know, you can tell our
Dad joke.
Dad joke. Okay. So, what else you got? Is that it? No words of wisdom? You were on Fox News. You were all over the place.
I mean, I thought I gave you like a lot of good stuff.
Are you spent?
Just saying.
Well, it could
I
have.
gave you the good. You told me not to do the bad and the ugly, so there you go.
No,
I
just okay.
There you go. So I'm being good. I'm behaving.
Give us some bad. Give us some bad. Look at that. Silence.
Well,
my mom said if you can't say something nice,
don't say nothing
you know,
else.
so I'm just saying.
So a lot of people get on the my tax dollars. My tax dollars pay for this. My tax dollars pay for that. Well, if you're buying it, own it. You can't just say that my tax dollars pay and not show
Eric,
up.
what are you talking about?
I'm just saying, you can't just sit there and say, this is baloney, that my tax dollars, you know, shouldn't go to paying for these. And
No one I know says this is baloney.
okay, bullshit. But again, you gotta own it and ask all the questions on the social media pages. You know, certainly ask away on ours, but also take
Make sure that the source of your answers come from people who are actually in the systems. You know?
That's what I mean. Take those answers. From
Ask
the
a mom,
source.
ask a dad that have the kids in the system and are going through all of the trials and tribulations that you two will face when you get here.
So I would ask our producers, but what they think about schools. But one is only she's in school yet, so but not elementary or high school, and the other one really only has grandkids, even though she's not old enough to be a grandma. But so, you guys, any insight into schools? Any one word of knowledge?
These two were a great combination.
On the ballot.
These,
Isn't there a new Scottsdale tax on the ballot?
they're,
Scottsdale tax.
Sorry.
Yes.
I could not read your handwriting, girl.
So,
I'm sorry. I'm not-
you know, they don't want to be heard. That was, of course, Amanda Forshee, who said, there's a new tax on there is a new tax on the ballot. And so you school people, what do you know about that new tax?
What I would say is to do your homework.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, we know that.
Well, I'm just saying, because you'll get a lot of ads and all this stuff about what they are, blah, 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 but, you know, they're hard to understand.
Just because it says in the ads that it's to go to schools, doesn't mean it's going to go to schools. The state of Arizona owns a lot of land
Yes.
that they can sell off to fund schools. So
Well, that is actually a great subject to talk about.
yeah, there's actually no real reason, in my opinion, to raise income tax to support schools.
Agreed.
When Arizona became a state, they were gifted a vast majority of the state as land by the federal government, and they said, here, you know, fund your schools.
And I will say, I don't think money is the issue with education here. I think it's leadership. I think a lot of the schools like Scottsdale, I think we have plenty of money or ways in which to get money without raising the taxes. But I think it's just not being spent properly or distributed properly. So that's another thing that you have to be aware of is, okay, so we have the money, how are we spending it? Or how are they going to spend it if we pass said tax bill? You know?
Well, and this is trying to go after the bill that Governor Ducey shot down, raising high income earners of households over 300,000 had another 1.5%. Again, just because it may not affect you doesn't mean it's not going to affect you.
Well, I would agree. So the strength of schools affects property values. It doesn't matter if you have no children in a district or ever will have. The strength of that district is, you know, has been shown to,
Or the perception of the
yeah,
district.
or the perception,
Yes.
right? So the override, there's an override that's going to be on the ballot this November, and they're proposing another a bump in that. The current override that they approved in 16 it was $8.5 million, and it runs through 2024. Probably one of the things that irritates me a little bit about when they pitching the override is they'll go, it only will increase your override by 2 cents. What they tell you is that they're not dropping the old override, or the override is, you know, is sunsetting, and you're just continuing to do an override. You know, I'd be the first to say that all the things they talk about are really important, you know, equipment and so forth. But you know, I think there's always a prudent in between, and I think that seems to get lost sometimes in these school bond referendums.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, it is, you know, this ballot will be important. It's got board members, and it's got a bond referendum, and all those things affect us directly and indirectly.
Every ballot is important.
Now, this one is
Every
very
ballot.
important.
Vote
especially
and
for
vote
Scottsdale.
often, as they say in Chicago.
Yeah. So now you're from Chicago too? Like,
No,
come on.
I just heard that from Shane.
Oh, okay.
They voted off.
All right.
Well, you guys, any other part? You didn't give me any bad yet. You just said, I can't give you any bad. I can't give you any bad.
That's the next segment. We lure them in with the good.
This is You got to tease them.
I would say go out there and educate yourself on education.
And vote in November.